Hi there, I'm Leah, and welcome to the House of Hormones podcast. Lisa Caddy, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm really, really excited about this episode.
Well, Leah, the pleasure is mine. Thank you so much for inviting me, and I'm really looking forward to sharing some of my expert advice with you and your audience.
Well, for people who don't know you, can you share a little bit about your background and how did you become a leading expert in hair and scalp health?
Well, I will try and keep this short, but I always wanted to be a hairdresser. When I was a little girl, I said to Mum and Dad, I want to be a hairdresser. They didn't want me to go down that route because they said, you'll never make any money. But hair was my fascination. And the years rolled by, and one day, 20 years ago, I saw that Philip Kingsley were advertising for a team of sales reps. And I thought, I already knew the products and was using them at that point. I'd fallen in love with them because I found them in my partner's bathroom at the time. And I just knew that I was going to be able to sell these products. So I joined Philip Kingsley. I don't know why they gave me a job. You know, I had no experience in hair. I had no experience in sales, but there was a good feeling between the both of us. And I started with Philip Kingsley 20 years ago and my career developed. So I grew this fascination with hair. I was in love with the products. I was doing the international training. And then 12 years ago, I think it was, I decided to enroll on the trichologist course. So I did my qualification and became a qualified trichologist and consulting with our patients in the clinic. So I found my way into the hair world eventually.
I love that. And for people that don't know, so I have obviously been on a journey now, learning more about hair and hormones, etc. So I know the word trichologist, but when I say this word to other people, they're like, try what?
Mm-hmm.
So it's not actually a term that's really well known. How would you explain trichology and a trichologist? Like, what does that cover?
You're right. 20 years ago, nobody knew what a trichologist was. And today it's much more known, but not, we're still trying to educate everyone. And a trichologist is an expert in hair and scalp health. So if you think of a dermatologist who is an expert in skin health head to toe, a trichologist really just focuses on kind of the head, hair and scalp. So we are interested in scalp health, scalp conditions, hair loss conditions, and actually the cosmetic aspect of hair as well. So, some people are just unhappy with their hair because they've done too much to it, too much bleach, too much heat, and, they need some help to get their hair back to their crowning glory. So, yeah, trichologist is all about helping people with their hair and scalp health.
I feel when you said they've done too much to it, too much bleach, I'm like, no, don't look at me. I feel judged.
Not you.
I'm joking. Obviously, hair is often seen as such a reflection of health, isn't it? So we always think of like if you have nice hair or it's a reflection of your health. What is it a sign of overall well-being and is it a sign of something's wrong if you're having issues with your hair?
It's true, isn't it? Because you look at someone who's got glossy, bouncy, glorious hair and you think, oh, vitality and youthfulness and health. Because your hair kind of radiates your inner health and your inner self. And it's true that your hair is a really good barometer of your general health. It's one to absolutely look at if look at your health if you see changes in your hair. So if you start to see that you're shedding too much hair on a daily basis, you're noticing more hair in your hairbrush, or you can start to see your scalp more when you put it in a ponytail or you brush it and you have that awareness. Or if the texture's changed, or your hair has become more brittle, it's good. And that's part of the holistic approach of trichology. It's good to look at what might be going on the inside because your hair is driven by lots of things and hormones is one of them and diet is one of them. General health is one of them. These are all the questions that we would ask in a consultation if someone comes to us and is complaining of hair loss. I want to know about their diet. I want to know about what medication they're taking. I want to know what stage of life they're going through, what their stress levels are like. So absolutely, I think your hair's a really good barometer. So don't ignore those changes with hair if you see them, because they can often mean that there was something underlying going on in the background.
That's so interesting for me. And I want to delve into that a little bit more, of course, with the hormones, because I can hear our listeners screaming, ask about this. And so I definitely want to delve more into that. But just before we leave that topic, what would your first tips be for someone that has noticed a difference? Because I think the norm the go-to would be, oh, have I changed my shampoo? Or maybe this shampoo isn't good for me. And I think a lot of people, some people believe that you should change your products every so often, and some people believe that you should just stick to your product. So before we delve into the hormones, can you tell me a little bit about the damage that products can have on your hair and your scalp?
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because when I would have clients in clinic and they would say, oh, Lisa, I'm seeing too much hair coming out. And it's funny because I changed my shampoo a week ago. And I think, oh, there's some explaining for me to do here. Or I would have lots of visitors from overseas and they'd say, actually, when I got into the country 2 weeks ago, my hair started shedding. Is it the water? Is it the fact that you have hard water here? So there are lots of, I think, myths that are out there and fears out there. And a lot of them revolve around topical things. Oh, it must be my shampoo. It must be the hard water. It must be the environment. When actually we're just overlooking some of those internal things. But when it comes to your choice of shampoos and conditioners, my message is always, if you love how your hair looks and feels when you have freshly washed your hair and your hair is glorious, you think, oh my gosh, I love this shampoo. Great, stick with it. If you're not feeling that, I would perhaps experiment and change to something else, because we often feel that or think that our hair gets used to a shampoo and conditioner, and that's not really the case. Is that something you've experienced before?
Yeah, I do think that. So that's not true.
It's not true. If you buy the shampoo and conditioner that is absolutely right for your hair type, so your hair texture, the length of your hair, if you get it right and you make that proper good decision, you should have the same result on your hair every time you wash and condition your hair. But lots of us make that choice on purchasing a shampoo and conditioner based on other factors. So we might say, oh, it smells really nice. I'm going to buy it because it smells like mangoes. Or, I'm just going to change to this brand because I've seen it advertised in a magazine. Or,
or maybe it's on offer. This is on offer.
Why not? Or we think our hair's changed. We think, oh, my hair's feeling really dry now. I'm going to change. I'm going to buy a shampoo for dry hair. So it's sometimes that we're just not actually buying the shampoo that's right for our particular needs. And you might use it for a few weeks. And at first you think, this is great. This is better than the last shampoo. But actually a few weeks down the line, you think, oh, would I buy it again? I'm not in love with it. So we brand hop and we go around and we try something else. But honestly, if you make the right choice and you get the right one for your hair in the first place, you won't change. I've used the same shampoo and conditioner for 20 years and I get the same result every single time.
Yeah, that's so interesting to me, because there are so many myths around hair. There are so many myths. And I've spoken to a couple of people, a couple of your colleagues now, and doing some research into the product. And my mind has been blown, blown. I cannot express to you. And again, you've just done it again, because I genuinely do think, oh, my hair's got used to this shampoo. I need to switch it up. So you're saying, you don't need to do that. That's not a thing. It's
not a thing. I mean, if you're not happy with it, yes, you do need to go on that journey and find the one that is right for you. But there's no need to swap and change. If you like the results you're getting, there's no need to swap and change thinking, oh, my hair's going to get used to it. It's about time I did a change. If you love what it's doing for you, then stick with it.
Tell us a little bit about hormones and the effect that they do have on our hair, because we also hear a lot about PCOS and perimenopause. Tell us the link.
Well, hair growth is very much hormone driven. It's not the only thing that affects hair, but it's very closely linked. Every single hair follicle is independent of its neighbour. We've got about 120,000 hair follicles on the scalp. So it's a very sensitive organ and very sensitive to hormones. And, some of those really common hormonal change times in a woman's life can be puberty, postpartum, the pregnancy before that, the perimenopause, the menopause. So there are definitely some kind of highlights in a woman's life when we know that those hormones are going to change. And it's largely down to the role of estrogen in all of those phases. And it's what estrogen is doing. We know that estrogen is a good hormone for hair. It's protective of the hair follicle. It helps us to maintain a normal hair cycle. And when we have a rise or a peak in estrogen, or we have diminishing estrogen, we're going to see some of those changes in the hair. So, for example, you mentioned pregnancy. if we think and we know that estrogen is a good hormone for hair and it maintains the growth phase of the hair cycle, when you're pregnant, your estrogen rises. And so it actually keeps the hairs in a growth phase for a longer amount of time than normal. That means you see less daily hair fall than you usually would. Those hairs continue to grow when they'd normally fall out. And so that means that during the duration of pregnancy, hair can just get better and better. Not all women experience this, but most women do feel that the hair gets better and more lustrous during pregnancy.
So that means that it doesn't mean that more hair is growing. It just means that less hair is shedding.
Absolutely, that's correct. Yes, yeah. So we're hanging on to hairs that we wouldn't normally do. So it's getting more lustrous. And then when baby is born and the estrogen really starts to go back to normal again, starts to normalize, those hairs that were almost artificially held in place then they don't have the support of that extra estrogen anymore. So they then move into a resting phase and they rest for about 3 months. And then when the follicles had a rest, those hairs will shed. So that's why most women would say, oh, it was about 3 months after baby's born that I noticed the hair started to shed. So it's a reflective type of hair loss as the hormones rebalance, the follicles go into resting and then they will shed. And it can be a significant amount of hair fall. So for you, it might have been quite a shocking amount.
It was insane, honestly. It was insane. It was like every time I washed my hair, I felt like crying. It can be so emotional, and it's an emotional time anyway, right?
It's the last thing you want, isn't it? You think, oh gosh, not the hair as well. My body's been through so much, and then the hair's falling out. But for the most part, hair recovers. It's a temporary hair loss condition just while those hormones are rebalancing. So the hair's shed. Yes, your hair might feel a lot thinner for a period of time, but then the hair starts to regrow and you might notice that all of a sudden you get a really new short fringe start to come through and the hairs are poking up. And
I still have it. My little baby hairs, for anyone that's like listening and not watching, I have like little baby hairs at the front of my, they're just always there. That's got nothing to do with pregnancy. They just live there.
Yes, yeah. And some of us do have that as well. So hair should normally return to normal postpartum. So that's kind of the changes you would see after having a baby.
To reframe that way of thinking, I think will be so helpful for women that have just had a baby, because you're not actually losing hair that you were kind of meant to have. Does that make sense? Because you've kind of reframed that myth.
It isn't anything to be concerned about. It's a natural part of the hair cycle involved with hormones. What can hinder hair recovery is if women have then become iron deficient perhaps after they've had a baby, and perhaps you're not sleeping or eating well, and it's quite a stressful and emotional time. So there are some, although we say hair should return to normal, there are some things that can hold your hair back a bit if your health isn't back to 100%, within that first 12 months. So it's then, if the hair hasn't returned to normal, it might then be worth thinking about getting some blood tests done and make sure that there's nothing that's kind of hindering that hair recovery.
Yeah, and I hear a lot, and I spoke again to one of your colleagues about the benefits of iron, and a lot of times it is to do with iron, isn't it, with your hair? Like that is a supplement that for people that are wanting to take supplements, and a lot of the times that's likely to be the one that they'll need for their hair.
Iron deficiency or ferritin deficiency, which is a protein that stores iron, is probably one of the most common causes of excessive hair shedding. So if you're seeing too much hair coming out on a daily basis, one of the most common causes is iron. So that's always worth getting a blood test for, because it can be easy to fix. Yeah.
And is that the same in men as well?
Quite rarely in men, because women are having a monthly cycle. So they're having a period every month. They're losing iron every month. And then you kind of take more iron in with your diet. And then the next month you lose a bit more. So, it's important that you have good iron levels, because men don't have a monthly cycle. They can store and maintain their iron levels really well. So it's actually quite rare for men to be iron deficient.
So for women who have would maybe have quite a heavy period, would you then see that they are quite likely to need an iron supplement or something like that? This podcast is sponsored by Philip Kingsley. Philip Kingsley trichologists are the leading authority on hair and scalp health. Their world-renowned clinics offer trichological consultations, treatments, and prescription products to treat hair loss, scalp conditions, and hair condition.
Their services are available either in person at their clinics in London and New York, virtually via online consultation, and via their hair loss and scalp subscription service. If you're worried about hair loss, take the Philip Kingsley online hair loss assessment and get 20% off when you subscribe to a treatment plan, or book a virtual consultation now at a limited time price. And if you're just in need of great hair and scalp care, use code HOUSE20 for 20% off. Visit www.philipkingsley.co.uk/House of Hormones for full details.
Yes, yeah. I mean, if they come to us and they're complaining of hair loss, one of the first things, you know, we talk about diet and do you eat red meat and things like that, because, you know, it's one of the best ways to get iron into your blood is to consume it. But if they say that they're having heavy periods, it is a red flag, and you would think, okay, we definitely need to get the iron levels checked, because it's quite likely that you're just not replenishing the iron with your diet on a monthly basis. And for some women, they just have to rely on supplements because they can't take enough iron in their diet. Your iron levels. And if you know you're someone who, a lot of my patients would say, I've been iron deficient before, or I think I am anemic. I'm sure my doctor mentioned that, and I think, we need to get on top of that, because that can be the number one cause. So it can be an easy fix, but it's just you need to go and have a blood test. So I wouldn't recommend you take iron supplementation before you know what your levels are. So it's good to get a blood test, know what your levels are, and then take the appropriate supplements.
Because is there an impact on your hair? Obviously, there's an impact overall on your health, but is there an impact if you're like over with iron? Do you know, if your iron levels are too high?
It's much more likely to have an impact on your general health than for it to affect your hair. So iron can become toxic. So it is important, actually, if you're taking a regular iron supplement, that you do periodic blood tests just to check your levels have not gone the other way and have gone too high.
And what about people who suffer from PCOS or endometriosis?
I think with endometriosis, obviously there are some hormonal things going on there, but in terms of estrogen deficiency, then that's probably not going to affect the hair. But if there is irregular bleeding or too regular bleeding or heavy bleeding, then that's going to impact iron levels. With PCOS, because there can be elevated androgens in the body, and, you know, so testosterone, we know, can be involved in hair thinning. It is actually quite common to see hair thinning in women with PCOS because of the excess androgens. So it is a tricky one with PCOS, because how do you lower those testosterone levels or the androgen levels? There's clinical treatments, and I know we'll talk about those, that you can take for hair thinning. But it is unfortunate for women with PCOS. It's a very difficult thing to treat. You know, you've got those symptoms of PCOS anyway, and then you have to suffer with the hair loss on top of it. So it can be difficult. But obviously keeping weight as normal and as regular as possible actually does help the hair when you have PCOS. But a lot of it is to do with androgen excess.
You've mentioned testosterone there, and on this podcast we've talked about testosterone a lot recently, so I feel like our listeners are like, oh, Leah, not again. She's spilling the tea again, and I always make the same joke. But tell us about the link between testosterone and hair. And in steps Lisa. You tell me what you think.
It's going to be annoying, isn't it, this one? I'm already annoyed at it myself, because, hey, who doesn't want a bit of the benefits of testosterone? So the truth about testosterone and hair is testosterone is obviously, we call it the male hormone, and men have 20 times as much, roughly, testosterone as women do. In a woman's body, so you have your testosterone and you have progesterone and you have estrogen, but it's all, pre-menopause, largely, it is all in ratio and all in balance. So that presence of testosterone in the body is not affecting hair. As we go through menopause or perimenopause and estrogen starts to diminish, but testosterone doesn't, it means that we're losing some of the hair follicle protection we were getting from estrogens, because remember, estrogen protects hair follicles. So testosterone can thin hairs in some women and men with a genetic predisposition. So overall, we can't say that testosterone is bad for everybody's hair. It is not great for your hair if you have a genetic predisposition. So let's, for example, say myself, I actually have a genetic predisposition to hair thinning. So I have female pattern hair loss. As I entered the menopause and my estrogen dropped, my hair follicles were losing that protection from the estrogen. That meant the testosterone in my body was able to run a bit of a riot and can start to affect hair follicles. And it starts to shrink the hair follicles over time in certain areas. So in women, and for me, that means the top area of the scalp can start to see changes. So the parting can get wider. You can often see your scalp a bit more. So you look in a mirror with the light above you and you can see through the hair. That's the effects of testosterone on me and on women who have a genetic predisposition to hair thinning. So if there's a family gene of pattern hair loss and you have it, then the testosterone that's already in your body as perimenopause hits can start to thin the hair follicles. It doesn't happen to everybody with the gene, and it can happen to different severities. So for some women, it's very minor and not so noticeable. For other women, it's really noticeable. And so unfortunately, for those with a genetic predisposition, testosterone is not their friend. And that is why supplementing with testosterone is actually going to exacerbate an existing hair thinning condition. So it's not really a good choice for hair. If that makes sense. That was quite a convoluted.
No, it does. No, you've explained that really well, and I have lots more questions. But I have two questions on that. So I want to go more into testosterone, but firstly, while we're on the topic of this gene, so how do we know if we have that?
So we can't identify the gene from a blood test. You have the gene when it's almost too late, because you actually start to see the changes in your hair. So you would probably start to see that your parting's got a bit wider, so you can see your scalp more, or the temple areas, which are kind of the top, I'm going to say corners of the scalp here, can start to look like they're receding a bit, especially in perimenopause and menopausal women. So high hairline here. When you start to see those changes, it's good to go and get a diagnosis, because a trichologist would be able to say to you, yes, these are the signs and symptoms of female pattern hair loss, so genetic pattern hair loss. Then you know you have the gene. So it basically, you present with those signs before you would realise you had the gene.
I've always said, when it comes to hair loss, and especially with men as well, they've said, oh, they get it from their mother, because obviously women are blamed for everything. But that's a myth you've heard, right? And they go, oh, it comes from your mother's side, like it.
Really good point. So the genes can come from either side. So it's, my dad, it's my father.
But that's not true.
It's not.
That's just made it up. That's just made, like, again, we're just trying to blame women, like it comes from the mother's side.
Exactly. It's those really, really, these myths go back such a long way, and then they're just perpetuated and everybody still believes them. But I can blame my father for my hair thinning because he was bald on top of dad. So I got my genes from my dad. Your genes come from both parents. It's like your blue eyes or your brown eyes or the shape of your nose. Those genes come from both parents. So we can get the gene from anywhere. And I think, it's important to look at family history, because for me, it was very obvious. I noticed my hair thinning and I thought, oh, I know what this is. Dad was very obviously bald on top. So in some families, there can be a very dominant gene and you just see it generation after generation after generation. However, some patients would come to clinic and we talk about their family history and say, okay, what was dad's hair like? What's mum's hair like? And they can go back 1 or 2 or 3 generations and say, actually, there was good hair both sides. In both families, mum and dad, good hair. So that gene must go much further back. But I always feel if it's a severe hair loss condition, normally there's quite a dominant gene, and it's quite obvious in the family history.
Okay, but there is no evidence to prove that it comes from your mother as opposed to your father. So it just comes from somewhere.
We're not blaming the mums, no.
No. So going back to the testosterone, because I know people will want me to ask so many more questions about this. I don't know how much you have seen, but I know you'll know about it, but about HRT, and obviously testosterone is becoming the topic of the month of the year. It's everything that we're talking about. The benefits for women who are taking HRT, it's now looking like the benefits are incredible and can be life-changing if you're to listen to some people. Even Davina McCall has spoken about this, and so many others have. If women are taking HRT and they're taking testosterone, what do you advise them then? As a trichologist, what are you saying to them?
Do you know, I think it's a balancing act, isn't it? Because if you feel dreadful and someone gives you HRT and all of a sudden it's like someone's given you your life back, and you now feel more confident, you've got strength, you've got stamina, and you feel incredible. If your hair is good and you don't have any worries about hair, fine. That is, fantastic. If you have noticed that actually your hair has started to deteriorate taking testosterone, it's a balancing act, because yes, the testosterone may be causing or exacerbating the hair thinning, but how important is it for you to take that testosterone? Because some women would say to me, Lisa, I'll just get a wig. I'll just get some scalp camouflage to cover up my thinning hair because I cannot not take this testosterone. It's that life change. For other women, they say, well, actually, the testosterone, it's okay. It's changed things a little bit, but my hair's more important. And so they would actually come off it. So it is a personal choice. And I think it depends how some people, their hair is their priority, and that's got to come first.
Yeah. I just think either way, and again, that's why we're having this chat today, because I think it's about educating women, and it's not to scare people or to put people off taking testosterone or to do anything like that, but it's to educate women so they can advocate for themselves. And we talk so much about advocating for yourself, and people don't always know what we mean here at the House of Hormones. When we say that, they don't know what we mean. And this is exactly what we mean. We're saying, the education is showing that the studies are now showing that testosterone can be great for so many different things. Okay.
But mainly it's going to affect those women who have a genetic predisposition. So for me, I know I have the gene. I have got hair thinning. I am pretty sure if I started to take testosterone, it would exacerbate my hair thinning. And that's just not something I'm prepared to do at this moment in time. However, for other women who don't have the gene, it's probably not going to affect their hair. So hooray for them. They can have the best of both worlds and take it and feel amazing.
Yeah. Well, I'm just so pleased you're here to share that knowledge with us, and people can trust that. And it's not just information that you're getting, like we're getting it from Lisa Caddy, the expert. So thank you for breaking those myths. One of the biggest myths that we would love to debunk, again, right, I cannot express to you how much I believed in this. And I'm not saying this to make myself sound stupid. I just am saying it because so many people also believe this, and I know they do, because I have, since I met with one of your consultants, I have not stopped talking about this to every single woman that will listen to me. Washing your hair. Okay. I thought that by washing my hair, and to the point that I used to show off, I feel like such an idiot. I used to show her, I only wash my hair once a week, because it's really bad to keep washing your hair, because you'll wash all the natural oils off, and people would say, oh, your hair is nice, but I only wash it. I try and wash it as little as possible, unless I have an event or something to go to. I only wash my hair once a week. I genuinely have believed that for so long. Tell us the truth about washing hair.
It's funny, isn't it? Yes,
I'm embarrassed.
We wouldn't be very proud if we said we only washed our face once a week, would we? So it's a strange thing that we
This is it. And so, but this is why I was so, like, I'm embarrassed. So what? No, tell us the truth. What is the truth?
Don't be embarrassed, because it's what most people believe. Look, if we think about what shampooing is for, so shampooing is actually cleansing your scalp. It's not so much about cleansing the hair. So we produce oil from our scalp. We've got dead skin cells constantly building up that actually get trapped by the hair. We've got sweat glands in the scalp. If you're doing a workout, it's a hot day, your scalp gets sweaty. There's bacteria on the scalp, living organisms. So all of these things are accumulating on the scalp. And we know that if this is all left on the scalp to collect over days or weeks, or sometimes longer for some people, it can actually start to cause inflammation in the scalp. So, and you can start to get itching, because you've got those living organisms on the scalp that start to multiply. So it causes itching, you can be scratching, inflammation. It can actually lead to changes in the hair shaft. So the quality of the hair is not so great. And for some people, if they then develop quite an extreme scalp condition, they can start to lose more hair than normal. So we know that cleansing the scalp is important because it exfoliates, it gets rid of all the dead skin, the bacteria, all of those things that can cause problems. So from a trichologist perspective, cleansing the scalp or shampooing is a good thing. The downside to shampooing a lot or regularly for some people, it can depend on your hair texture. So for me, I've got very fine textured hair. I have to shampoo it every day. It will not look acceptable if it's not shampooed daily. And that's fine for me. But for some people who maybe have very thick or curly hair, shampooing regularly or daily for them is absolutely not an option because the styling is too much. So my message really is, don't shy away from shampooing. You don't have to not shampoo. A lot of my clients would say, oh, don't shout at me, Lisa, but I've been shampooing my hair every day. And I think, no, I'm going to shout at you if you don't shampoo every day. But it's just the fact that what can be more damaging for the hair is the heat that has to often be applied once you've shampooed. So that's the downside of shampooing regularly, is if you then have to blow dry and then you put the straightening irons on and you have to wand your hair every time you've washed it, it's the damage to the actual hair shaft that can happen as a result of the styling. The shampooing and the cleansing is not what's causing the problem. And actually, going back to days when, and I'm sure, sorry mum, but I'm sure my mum used to wash my hair with washing up liquid when we were little kiddies. We're talking 50 years ago. We didn't have premium shampoos then. Yeah. So we didn't have shampoos that had proteins in and conditioners in and moisturizers in. All you got was a cleaner scalp, but your hair was probably awful and dry. And I think that's where these myths come from, is that, back in the day, you wouldn't want to shampoo your hair with that kind of product every single day. But now it's like, if you've got a gorgeous moisturizer, you know that if you put it on every night before bed, your skin's going to be better. And so think of your shampoo the same. It's better for your scalp health and optimizing hair growth if you've got a clean and healthy scalp.
That's amazing, isn't it? And that's changed. That's reframed everything that I think. Thinking of my scalp the way I think of my face. And I've now been saying that to people. Now this is the new thing that I say. And I'm like, well, think of, you wouldn't wear makeup all day and then not wash your face. It's like that type of thing. And it's so true, the build up. I think the thing as well is, if what you said earlier, back to your point earlier, if you get the right products, it then, your hair doesn't feel drier after you're washing it. It doesn't feel, worse. So you're not worried about what products you're putting on your scalp, because I think there's a huge concern with women these days, and rightly so, about what products we're using on our skin, on our scalp, that type of thing, in case there's endocrine disruptors and all this type of thing. So it's so great to get this advice, but it's important to know to have the right products then, and you won't see dryness, or you won't see, your hair won't be negatively affected by it.
Exactly.
So, for me, I'm washing my hair 2 to 3 times a week because, like you said, it is about the balance and stuff as well. And that is what's manageable. But I have noticed a great difference.
This podcast is sponsored by Philip Kingsley. Philip Kingsley trichologists are the leading authority on hair and scalp health. Their world-renowned clinics offer trichological consultations, treatments, and prescription products to treat hair loss, scalp conditions, and hair condition. Their services are available either in person at their clinics in London and New York, virtually via online consultation, and via their hair loss and scalp subscription service. If you're worried about hair loss, take the Philip Kingsley online hair loss assessment and get 20% off when you subscribe to a treatment plan, or book a virtual consultation now at a limited time price. And if you're just in need of great hair and scalp care, use code HOUSE20 for 20% off. Visit www.philipkingsley.co.uk/House of Hormones for full details.
I think most people find the hair is more manageable. Most people feel that when they freshly wash their hair, it looks better and it feels better. And, if people leave it to day 3 or day 4, they end up putting it in a ponytail or using some dry shampoo or something to kind of hide the fact that the scalp is really oily. So most people would feel the hair looks and feels better when it's freshly washed. It is the downside of time constraints to some people and how much heat they're having to put on their hair, and, and hair texture. If you have afro textured hair, you won't want to shampoo your hair every day because the styling is, it can take hours and hours. So it's that old balancing act again.
Yeah. And also hair fall. So I've noticed a lot less hair when I'm washing my hair. And I understand that if I'm washing it once a week, of course, that's going to be the accumulation of a week's hair fall, right? So it's so just so our listeners don't fall into the trap of washing your hair more doesn't mean that less hair comes out. The hair's coming out, but it just means that you see less of it, right?
That's true, because, you know, on average, we lose approximately 100 hairs a day. And so if you're shampooing every day, you're helping those dead old hairs, which are no longer growing anyway. You're just helping to loosen them and get rid of them. So you would see a consistent amount of hair fall every day. But then if all of a sudden I stopped shampooing for a week and I shampooed next Tuesday, I would see a lot of hair fall, because of all of those accumulations of hairs that I should have been losing are all perhaps going to come out pretty much at once. And it would look a shocking amount. Yes, you find the more frequently you shampoo, it would be less noticeable on a daily basis.
Yeah, less noticeable. You mentioned dry shampoo.
Yes.
What are your thoughts around dry shampoo? I feel like you're going to tell me off for using dry shampoo, but okay. What are your thoughts on dry shampoo?
Do you know, dry shampoos? Well, goodness, I mean, when I was a teenager, dry shampoos it was a love-hate relationship, wasn't it? Because actually you needed them because you didn't want to shampoo your hair with fairy liquid. And then when you did, your scalp would itch and they feel all claggy and you think, oh. But, you know, they've come on a long way now. So ingredient-wise, dry shampoos are so much better. I mean, shampooing your hair with shampoo and water is obviously the best thing. But again, for some people, that's just not practical and they don't have time to do it. Maybe just the fringe gets oily and you think, I don't want to wash my entire head of hair because it's just my fringe. So dry shampoos can be really helpful. Good ingredients. I definitely saw stories a couple of years ago about dry shampoos making hair fall out or causing hair loss if you use them too much. And I know people got very worried about them, but it's just not true. Dry shampoos will not make your hair fall out. I think how you apply them, in terms of, I did see videos of someone putting dry shampoo in, and the head massage that followed was so vicious that I thought, well, actually, you're damaging your hair with the amount of scrubbing and massaging the dry shampoo in. That's not great for your hair. But ingredients in dry shampoos per se are not going to make your hair fall out. And sometimes they are a godsend and they're a saviour, because your alarm clock didn't go off, or you're going out in the evening and you need to refresh your hair. Fine. Just don't rely on them all the time. Rely on your wet shampoo to do the job for most of the time.
Yeah. And I suppose I almost think of dry shampoos a bit like, you know, like putting makeup on as well. And it's like you're kind of clogging your pores, but so don't do it all the time. Like let your scalp breathe, right? Because I do notice if I use dry shampoo, and I do use dry shampoo, so I'm so pleased you haven't just completely said no, you can't use that anymore. I'll use it, but I do notice it does make me, like, it does itch, do you know, like it will make me, and the next day, like, I will be like, oh, I need to wash my hair. It does make you want to wash your hair more.
Yeah, it does it, because they don't clean your scalp, do they? They make your scalp look or your hair look potentially cleaner, but they don't actually do a cleaning job. So for most of us, we actually can't wait to wash our hair after we've used a dry shampoo.
Yeah. Scalp health is just often so overlooked when it comes to hair. What are some simple little habits that people can put into their everyday?
I would say, I mean, obviously the shampooing thing is important if you particularly have an oily scalp. So if you have fine textured hair, you are probably going to be one of those people that says, I've got to shampoo every day. So don't avoid it. So still do your regular shampooing routine. That's really important. One of the things that people often do for their scalp, which is not a great thing, is actually massage oils in. There's a lot of oil application on scalps, and it's not necessary, and I think it can be very cultural, but I think a lot of people do it because they feel they have a dry scalp or they see a flaky scalp and start to massage oils in. Actually, that's the completely wrong thing to do, because oils will just kind of stick down any dead skin and compact the bacteria that's already on the skin. And then often I've seen in clinic, my clients develop a scalp problem, like a contact dermatitis, because they've been applying oils. So oils are not going to make hair grow. So massaging oils in are not going to improve hair growth. they can actually cause more problems than they actually help. So I would say avoid putting oils on the scalp, shampoo really regularly. And also, you know, you can eat for your scalp as well. So if you're someone who has a tendency for dry skin, make sure you're eating things like omega-3, so all your essential fatty acids in your diet, because they keep the skin supple, and they can also, you know, your scalp is also skin at the same time. So if you're suffering from a dry or flaky scalp, make sure you're having enough omega-3 in your diet, and that might really help.
That's so interesting. My mum will be horrified. She used to heat oil, like olive oil, and as kids, and put it into my head because I had like a dry scalp. I'm going to let her listen to this. That's really interesting about eating for your hair. So nutrition and what other nutrients are good for our scalp and for our hair?
Well, do you know, to just kind of take a step back from there, most of us don't realise how important our diet is for our hair. It is hugely important. Our hair cells are actually the body's second fastest dividing cells. So that means that nutritional requirements for hair are really quite high. And we often don't make that correlation between what we're eating and how regularly we're eating to how our hair looks. So bear in mind that hair is 80–90% protein. The number one food group we need to be making sure we eat plenty of is protein, because that's going to be really important for hair structure, hair quality, hair resilience, hair condition. So a good protein-rich diet, so protein with every meal if you can, is going to shore up the hair and make sure it is the best quality and as glossy as it can be. So protein is really important. But also eating really regularly, because, you know, 4 or 5 hours after you've eaten a meal, energy that's intended for hair cells from food will start to get diverted to other parts of the body, because hair is a non-essential tissue. We could live without our hair. It doesn't, I mean, we wouldn't be very happy, but, you know, we don't actually need hair for anything. So hair is almost at the back of the queue when it comes to diet. So if we're not eating regularly, if we're not having a snack every 4 hours or something to eat, then our hair can start to suffer. So we see those changes. Complex carbohydrates really important. I know a lot of people like to, if they're going on a diet or summer's coming up or there's a wedding, it's, oh, we've got to go carb free. But actually, if you're struggling with your hair, that's one of the worst things that you can do, because you get so much energy from your complex carbohydrates to keep hair cells going. So don't keep the carbs, keep the carbs in.
You heard it here first, ladies. Eat the carbs for your hair.
And have a snack. Go ahead. There you go.
Have a snack. That's amazing. That's amazing. Finally, some good news, Lisa. Finally. It's just so interesting that we don't know this. How do we not know this? Why is this not normal information that's out there in the world? I know it is for you and you're spreading the word, but why does everyone not know this?
It's a strange thing, isn't it? There's just this disassociation, you know, if we're particularly talking about hair and what we're eating. You know, I would see in consultation, I'd have a number of fitness instructors as my patients, and they would come with hair shedding, and they were not having enough calories for their type of job. They were doing 4 or 5 aerobic sessions a day or spin sessions, and they were burning so many calories that what was left was not going to their hair, it was going to other parts of their body. So, but they just did not actually, a light bulb came on when we would talk about it. But, you know, there are so many faddy diets as well, aren't there? Restrictive eating, and so time restricted eating, low calorie, low fat, low carb, all of these things. I would just say, you know, if you're worried about your hair, I would not do any kind of extreme dieting, because it's probably going to exacerbate the problem.
So again, omega-3 supplements are good. Focus on protein and eat the carbs, girls. Eat the carbs.
100%. You know, watch your iron levels. If you're a woman of menstruating age, you've got to keep an eye on your iron levels. And a couple of those other things that are really important. Vitamin B12 is really important for hair as well, because it helps to maintain healthy red blood cells, which are feeding the hair. And, you know, if you have decided to go vegan or vegetarian, or you're just cutting meat down, you might not realise that you might be missing out on B12. It's a really easy one to overlook, and again, a really easy one to fix, but it's vital for hair growth. So it's a good one to have on your radar.
That's so interesting. You mentioned like fatty diets or time restricted eating. What about hair and intermittent fasting then?
Do you know, again, my message would be, and I like intermittent fasting. When I do it, it makes me feel good. It keeps, my calories. But I am someone who struggles with my hair, and I think actually, I'm not going to do it because I know it affects my hair too much. My hair is very sensitive to my nutrition. I know that. So I would say, again, if you're somebody who's struggling with your hair, I wouldn't do the intermittent fasting, because intermittent fasting is not actually good for everybody. It doesn't work for every body type and every person. So actually, if you feel that intermittent fasting is affecting your hair, then I would say, I wonder if there's another way that you can maintain your weight or feel healthy without doing the fasting. Maybe you're just someone who you really need that breakfast at 9 o'clock in the morning to optimize your hair growth. It could be that.
Yeah. And I think a lot of the times, your body is telling you what's good for you, right? So everything that you're talking about here, like your hair will tell you, it will react. You're saying, I just need nutrition. I'm so dependent upon it.
Exactly. You do get, and I think that is one of the benefits of aging. And actually, you do get wise to how your body reacts to things. You listen to your body a lot more. And, I know I'm someone who, my iron levels have to be really quite high for my hair to be okay. So it's through years of trying different things and having blood tests and actually realizing what changes I see in my hair. So I think going back to the fact that your hair is a really good barometer of your general health, it is a good thing to keep your eye on. If you do anything, whether you're stopping or starting a contraceptive pill or a medication, or you decide to change your diet, or, have your hair in mind, because those things can show up quite quickly.
Your hair is such a good sign of something that's wrong, right?
100%. Yes, absolutely. And actually, and your hair is also a really good sign when things are good. So if you're healthy and you've got things right with your health and your diet, you should have shiny hair, bouncy hair. Those characteristics of healthy hair, shiny, bouncy, just looks good and healthy, can be a sign that actually inside things are pretty okay as well.
It's really interesting because obviously, like, really nice, healthy hair is often linked to pregnancy, and we talked about that earlier. But also maybe there's a link there just to when you're pregnant, you really do prioritize looking after yourself, resting a lot, eating properly, all of these things.
And I think, time constraints can play a part. I think postpartum, I cannot imagine how difficult it could be. If you say to a woman, oh, make sure you get enough sleep when she's just had a baby, she'll probably fly off the handle, because, how are you going to get enough sleep and eat well and do all those things that you're supposed to do? So there's definitely there's going to be a period, I think, when a bit of neglect comes in. But, once you can get a routine back and get back on the healthy eating, things can return back to normal.
There's so many products out there for hair growth, and there's a lot of noise about hair growth and people saying you can use this and use this. What's your take on the products that are on the market at the moment for hair growth?
Gosh, there's so much, isn't there? And it's no wonder the consumer is confused about what to try, and so much clever marketing. Really, I would say try and find some clinical studies. If you are thinking of investing a significant amount of money, then it's worth having a look to see if you can see any studies on particular ingredients. And because there's so many different types of hair loss and different causes of hair loss, there is not one treatment that's going to suit everybody. But I'm going to mention the most common treatment that we would use and that most trichologists would use for hair thinning or female or male pattern hair loss, where we're losing hair at the top area of the scalp here, is minoxidil. So minoxidil is licensed. It is licensed for a number of reasons. A, it works, it induces hair growth, so it does improve hair growth, and it's safe to use. It is available from pharmacies. It's best to be under supervision when you're using something like minoxidil. But it's not a panacea. It's mostly for hair thinning. But it's a good treatment. It's effective. There are lots of things on the high street and from supermarkets that won't have that research and won't have the clinical studies. So I would say I do feel a bit skeptical about lots of off-the-shelf treatments out there. And if you're struggling with hair loss, either see a trichologist if that's available to you, or at least go to your GP and ask them to run some basic blood tests, because it just might highlight something that you were unaware of.
The problem is, obviously, when you say to people, just go to your GP, we know a lot of people are struggling to get appointments with their GP, but what blood tests should people be asking for?
I totally agree. It's almost, you don't want to pick the phone up and ring a doctor's surgery, do you, these days, because it's hard to even get an appointment. But if you do manage to get an appointment, a lot of GPs actually know the basic blood tests to test. But if they don't, I think my top 5 would be if you can ask them to get your iron levels checked, your ferritin. Your ferritin is a protein that stores iron, and it's absolutely vital for hair. Your vitamin B12, your red cell folates, and your vitamin D. They would be my top 5 choices to try and get a blood test for. And if you show up with deficiencies of any of those, it could well be affecting your hair. And then your GP should be able to advise you on what supplementation to take to get your levels back into the normal ranges.
That's really, really helpful. Lastly, I want to ask you, in the world of hair and hair health and scalp health, what's exciting? Like, what's coming up? Is there any new trends that are happening? Is there anything you can tell us, or any exciting research that's been done?
There's always research going on behind the scenes, and stem cell research has been one that's been on the radar for a few years now. I don't feel there's been any major breakthroughs yet, so I think it's a very difficult area. But what I do think is exciting and really helpful is research into conditions that we already know about, because when research was done, for example, on female pattern hair loss, and maybe 20 years ago, what we thought we knew was true then, and then the appropriate treatments. Now, more research that's gone into these things, it's actually revealed that not everything that we believed was true. The role of androgens in some women, so the role of testosterone in some women, which we talked about earlier, it's not true that testosterone will thin hair in all women. It's going to be some. So the research that's going into that is really interesting, because that will then open doors for different kinds of treatment. So actually we get better treatment for the existing conditions that we've had for some time. So I do think that the stem cell therapy is something that is probably going to come into the forefront, but just learning more about what we already know is just going to be much more helpful for people in the future.
Has there been much research done into a woman's cycle? So like the difference in her hair growth throughout just the normal monthly cycle. Has that been studied a lot?
I am not aware of a study, but I think the difficulty with that is because the hormones fluctuate so much. In fact, you could go for a blood test in the morning and test your estrogen levels, and then you could go in the evening and they would look completely different.
Yeah.
So I think that would be, I mean, gosh, it would be interesting, but wow, whoever's going to do that research, it's going to be detailed.
It is. It's always so interesting to us here at the House of Hormones, and we do always come back to this, though, how interesting women's bodies are and how little research has been done. Because I always say, if you were a scientist, surely this must be the most exciting thing. Like, it changes every day, whereas a kind of man is cyclical of a day. We go around this whole monthly loop and everything changes within our bodies.
Considering hormones influence so many things and have such an impact on a woman's body, I mean, it's absolutely necessary, isn't it? And even talking about the menopause has only really just been popular in the last couple of years, hasn't it? Goodness knows where we went for help before. So thank goodness for people like you that are, championing women and waving the flag and getting the message out there.
And trying to get the real education from the experts like you, so we can stop believing the myths that we've always believed, and we can advocate for ourselves. So even if people don't have the money to go and buy the most expensive products on the market, or go and see yourself down at Philip Kingsley, or, they can do these little things like you've taught us today, the nutrition, the hair washing. We are allowed a little bit of cheeky dry shampoo. It's these are my takeaways, by the way. But we can do those things to advocate for themselves. And so thank you so much for coming on today, because it's so helpful for our audience to know these things of where they can start. And obviously there is more help out there with you and your team, if people are having bigger problems that they can't tackle on their own. But thank you so much for all the education you've shared with us today. It's so helpful for women everywhere.
Well, I'm really pleased it's helpful, and it's been a pleasure, and thank you for having me on.
Thanks, Lisa. If you enjoyed this episode today, don't forget to like and subscribe to the House of Hormones podcast. Your support really does help us reach more people and spread the word about women's health. If you want to stay connected, follow us on our social media. And here's something really important. We're on a mission to secure more funding for women's health initiatives. Sign our government petition today and help us amplify our voices for better healthcare resources and support. Together, we can make a difference. Thank you for being part of our journey. We can't wait to see you in the next episode.